This is what I call your ultimate sleep guide. And I've seen these 5 tips work time and time again with clients over the last 8 or so years. Hundreds, potentially even thousands of people it's helped, and I know it's going to help you as well. So let's begin. And if it doesn't help you, by the way, I will give you your money back. So tip number 1. Now with these tips, I actually want to split them in, let's say, a linear fashion. I don't want to just say random tips because that's quite unorganized. I want to organize this for you so you can easily remember them. So tip number 1 is what I call the wake up tip. And it's what I call a good night's sleep starts as soon as you wake up. And what does this mean? Well, this means you're proactively thinking about your sleep earlier in the day, as opposed to reactively dealing with your sleep. Sometimes by the time it gets to the point of sleep, I call it the damage has already been done. If you're trying to get to sleep but you haven't done any tools or practices or down regulation beforehand, it's extremely hard for your brain to just suddenly go from 100 mile an hour to sleep. It just doesn't work like that. So if we can get you to think about sleep as soon as you wake up, you're at a much better stage, or you're in a much better place when trying to get to sleep. It's a really good tip. Now, within this tip, you can do, actually, let me just give you one tip to take away. Within this wake up tip, try to move the body. Try to exert a bit of energy, whether that's stretching, mobilization in your house, going for a walk, going to the gym, moving outside, whatever you can do just to exert the body. And if you want a bonus one on top of this, try to move the body outside. Because if you can move the body outside, and now it's summer, you're getting that natural sunlight in your eyes. And that natural sunlight, it has, let's say, a bidirectional relationship with melatonin in the evening. So cortisol kind of speaks to melatonin if your eyes are subjected to natural sunlight in the morning and says, hey, we're outside, let's start the sleep timing. Does that make sense? So by going outside, moving the body, exerting some energy, you are communicating with melatonin. Melatonin helps you sleep, saying, hey, start the sleep timing because we're outside. So by the time nighttime comes, produce melatonin, produce it sooner to help us fall asleep. Did I explain that well? I hope so. So exerting the body, naturally, you're going to feel more tired later on in the day. And then getting out in sunlight, that's a bonus one to help melatonin production later on. So that's your wake up tip. That is tip, I don't need to put a number. That's tip number 1. Let's move to tip number 2. Now, I may exclude some people from this if you're not a caffeine drinker, so I'll try and go through this quite quickly. But if you're a caffeine drinker, try to bring your caffeine to the morning slot. Before 12, before 11 a.m. if you can. Actually, it's 12:30 and after this I'm going to have a coffee, so the irony here, right? No, but in all serious, if you can bring this caffeine intake much sooner in the day, you are helping that half-life of coffee. What do I mean? Caffeine, sorry, not coffee, I meant caffeine. Caffeine has a half-life of about 6 hours, depending how you metabolize and assimilate that caffeine. Very person dependent. But let's say 6 hours. So if you have 100 milligrams of coffee here, 6 hours later, you'll have 50 milligrams in your bloodstream. 6 hours later, you'll have 25. So it makes sense. If we can bring that caffeine intake sooner, earlier in the day, you will have much less caffeine circulating in your bloodstream when you're trying to get to sleep. It's the classic, tired, but you're wired. Caffeine's still going around. It's a simple tip, but it's so good. It really, really works. So bring your caffeine sooner, earlier in the day. Cool? All right. Then we move, so that's tip number 2. Then we move to, let's say, early afternoon dinner. I'm running out of room already. So this is early dinner. Now, I don't want to say you need to have an early dinner. None of these are mandatory. These are just what I've seen work really well. And obviously this is depending on your lifestyle, on family, children, work, etc. But if you can bring that dinner as soon, or not as soon, as early in the day as possible, not early in the day, what am I saying? Early in the evening as possible, you are going to be digesting that food much sooner than if you were eating later. And we know what that's like. When you're digesting food and you're trying to get to sleep at the same time, where does the energy go? The energy wants to be going to that digestion. It's extremely hard to fall asleep if you're trying to digest a big steak or a very heavy pasta dish, for example. So if we can bring that dinner, and that's really up to you, of course, earlier in the evening, your digestion it won't maybe be 100% complete, but it's going to be in a much better position when you're trying to sleep. So the energy isn't going down to digestion and your gut, it's actually going to other places which will help you sleep, to help with that sleep cycle, if that makes sense. So instead of going to your gut. Like I said, it really depends what time that works for you. But that's a really good tip if you want to fall asleep much quicker. Now, this moves on to tip number 4, which is a walk after a meal. So, walking after a meal really helps with that blood glucose regulation. So after a meal, what do we tend to do? Plonk ourselves on the couch. We do that most nights. I do that most nights, working from the couch. So if we can get into the habit of walking, this does 2 things. One, I just said, helps that blood glucose regulation, but it also helps with switching on that calming system, the parasympathetic nervous system. So you have the central nervous system, and then you have 2 branches, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Sympathetic is fight and flight. Most likely by the time you come to dinner, you will be in a fight and flight state because of work, because of stress, because of everything that's gone on in the day. Parasympathetic is the calm, rest, relaxation, rest and digest. And walking after dinner will promote that relaxing state, what's that going to do? It's going to help you feel calm going into that later evening part, which is perfect for sleep. That is what we want. So walking after a meal helps with that blood glucose regulation, and it helps with, what have I just put? Walking. That says walking, by the way. And it helps switching on that calming system, that parasympathetic system. So walking after that dinner time. And then brings on to our last tip. I'm just going to put it up here. Downregulation. And we've already kind of started this tip by walking after dinner. Downregulation, this is completely up to you how you downregulate. So in the day, we're upregulated. We have lots on. We have we have tasks to complete. We have work to get done. We have training to do. We have lots of communication with colleagues, family, friends, etc. We're upregulated. So we need to downregulate. If you're upregulating or upregulated by the time you're sleeping, or still when you get to sleep, your brain's wired. It's lots coming on. You have to focus on so much. You're hyper alert, cortisol's up, fight and flight is switched on. It's just not a great place or a great position to be in when you're trying to sleep. So we need to think the opposite. How can we downregulate? How you downregulate is up to you. 2 of my favorite tips on this phase, or with this phase, is breathing exercises, because it taps into your physiology straight away. Specific one you can do a simple box breathing about 15 minutes before bed. So simple inhaling for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold again for 4. This once again helps down regulation, slows down the heart rate, brings you into that parasympathetic state. Then another one is a hot shower. So hot showers help with something called vasoconstriction or vasodilation. I should have looked this up. I think it's vasoconstriction. So when you have a hot shower, the blood rushes to the outer, so to the peripherals. So when the blood rushes to the peripherals, we're quite hot after the hot shower. When you cool down after that hot shower, your core temperature drops. You need a nice and cool core temperature when you're trying to sleep. If your temperature is high, your body struggles to fall asleep. If it's in a cooler state, it is more favorable to sleep. So a hot shower, it sounds weird, it's going to heat me up. But after it, you get that cooling effect. Your core temperature drops. So a hot shower is really beneficial as that end point. I do it every night and it really helps me just calm down. That end point in the day, It's the sleep trigger. It's the final piece of the sleep puzzle, which will help you sleep. There's many other things you can do: reading, writing, meditation, mindfulness. There's so many under this bracket, but I don't want to overwhelm you today. So I really recommend breathing, and I really recommend a hot shower. And then my 5 tips. What do you think? Well, look, I'm going to leave it there because a lot of information can be quite overwhelming. But trust me, I've seen time and time again these really work. Even if you pick a couple to begin with, right? Start slow, start simple. Incorporate them as the weeks go by, as the months go by, and you can always add another one in. Okay, let me start up with the wake up tip. Then maybe I'm going to start with the down regulation. That's 2 things that you haven't done before, which is going to help your sleep. Then once you've done them, you can maybe add more, or maybe they're working and you don't need to add any others. Really, it's up to you and what works for you and your lifestyle. But these are really, really good, and they really, really help. And I know they will help you too. So that is it. I really hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found that valuable. If you struggle with your sleep, please implement. I implore you to implement some of these, and they're really going to help. So if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Would love you for it. I'm starting to post on social media, so please let me know if you are enjoying these longer form videos. And for today, I need another coffee. Catch you soon. I am Josh. All the best. Thanks for watching.